Coaches, are you coaching your parents? Do you view the parents as competition or are they on your same side? Well, this is a really unique episode. We've got Skye Eddy with us from the Sideline Project. It's episode 50 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast, where we get to dive into all things coaching of parents. Well, Skye, thanks for joining us. Just for our listeners, just take us through a little bit your background first, just so we can frame this for the coaches listening. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. Episode 50. Congratulations.
Yeah, we've survived. That's down to my colleague Mark, who unfortunately can't join us today. But Mark is nothing if not disciplined and focused, so he gets the credit for the 50th episode for sure.
Excellent. Well, I have a strong background in sport. I grew up playing soccer, playing football, grassroots here in the United States. I then progressed, played with our youth national teams, played in college, played professionally in Italy for Tavignaco Femminile. And this whole time I was an active coach. Really, since high school, I started coaching. And I'm right now a coach developer for US Soccer, coach educator for United Soccer Coaches. So coaching is a big part of the work that I'm doing as well. And I was a multi-sport athlete growing up. I played basketball, I played soccer, I was a track athlete. And all of this sort of has morphed into the work that I'm doing with soccer parenting right now. I'm also a parent. I have a daughter who works in the professional game right now in MLS for the Columbus Crew. She's a high performance player herself. And my son Davis was more of a grassroots recreational player and played all through high school. He's now in college. So really coming at this from a variety of perspectives as a coach, as a player, and importantly, as a parent as well.
Yeah. Hey, let's start with a challenge to our listeners, to the coaches listening, because I hear a lot of complaints about parents, and it's understandable. I mean, some parents, whew, it's difficult, but sometimes it's like the tail wagging the dog.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be that way, and it doesn't have to be a combative relationship. If we get parents on our side, I think it can transform the whole kind of environment around a team. Like a lot of coaches seem to view parents as a pain in the ass or a pain in the ass for our American listeners, when actually parents are assets. Like
yeah.
they've got a lot to offer if we coach them and include them in our environment.
Absolutely, Simon. I mean, this has been my journey with this work that I've done with the Sideline Project, as you mentioned, with Soccer Parenting, which is a website I have created specifically for parent education in order to kind of, to your point, acknowledge the fact, amplify the fact that parents are an essential stakeholder in the youth sports experience of children. And they've largely been not only ignored and not supported and educated, but unfortunately, to your point, many parents who are not that irrational, hysterical, crazy sports parent, many parents, most parents are level-headed parents who have some stress now and then. And those parents have not been supported, acknowledged, have largely been pushed away. And we do have a tendency, I do think this is starting to change, but historic tendency to assume and make lots of assumptions about parents. When I do coach education around parent engagement, some of my first questions to coaches is, what do you believe to be true about sports parents? Because we need to acknowledge the bias that we do have and pull those layers back to that.
Well, bias is a great jumping off point there because, in my experience, parents are the experts in their own children, but they're subjective experts.
Yeah.
Like they are the experts I mean, they could tell you everything you need to know, once you get them started, but they're subjective as well. Like I'm a coach and a parent of two teenagers, a dancer and a basketballer. I sit on the sideline watching the game and even I, with all my experience, 25 years grassroots sport, been club leader as well. Even I'm sitting there noticing some subjective feelings,
Yeah.
noticing some emotions when my daughter, especially when my daughter's playing competitive basketball. And I don't say a single word to the referees. I barely,
Yeah.
like I clap. cheer a little bit. I'm at one of the quieter parents because really try to
Yeah,
modify and control my own behavior because I'm aware of the example that I'm setting. So I kind of look calm on the outside, but I can tell you, even with all my kind of experience, I'm feeling, still feeling those emotions, and it gets to the kind of crux of like some of the challenges parents are facing because you do feel judged. Like if we're honest with
absolutely.
ourselves, you do feel judged as a parent
And
when your kid's out there.
yeah, not to call you out on the language that you're
Mhm.
using, but you're doing what the majority of people do, and they just say parents.
Mm.
And it's just some parents are that way, and some parents are this way. And what happens is that we just have this tendency through our language, through our interactions, to lump all parents into this category that you're right. Absolutely. You do feel really judged. But to your point, the reason I founded Soccer Parenting and the Sideline Project and the work that I'm doing in this parent engagement space, the Sideline Project is our all sport intervention around parent engagement. And the reason I founded these companies is because I consider myself to be a really good parent. I have a really strong background in the game. I actually consider myself to be a really great coach. I've had excellent coaching mentors. Of course, I always have things to learn, don't get me wrong. However, I found it really difficult to show up for my children as a sports parent in a regulated, positive way that met their needs based on who my children are. And I knew that with my background in sports, if this was hard for me, that it was going to be and was actively hard for many other parents as well. And these are the challenges that we're trying to solve is uncovering bias, to use that word again, in the coach parent relationship. But bigger than that, it's so easy to talk about the problems. Instead, we're really solution minded and working with organizations and coaches to actively, positively define the coach parent relationship, what those boundaries are, so that we can get past this nuance of question of the confusion of the coach parent relationship and actually address it straight on so that we can take advantage of the fact that parents are a great asset when it comes to player inspiration and development.
It takes extra work though. It just does. It just does when you're a coach. It really
Does
does.
it to you?
Mm.
Tell me why. Like what about it means or it feels like it would be extra work? Like interacting with parents, having to take that
Mm.
moment?
Well, I don't think I've ever met a coach who said, "Well, I got into this so that I could work with the parents."
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Whereas they do say, "I got into this so I can help the kids," or got into this because I love my sport and I want to help people, or the sport helped me and I can see how that can help others. I want to give back.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
if you put all your energy into that, sometimes it can feel like, well, I don't have extra energy for the parents. Also, there's something unsaid there. There's like the coach thinks they're doing the parent a favor by coaching their kids. You know, the parents sometimes, some parents think they're doing the coach a favor by choosing to play for, for your club or team. And now that's a little black and white, but those perceptions do exist.
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
I'm sometimes just really struck how little thanks parents give to coaches. And I don't mean that to imply a criticism of parents. I just mean, what is it about that? Like, why do we have a situation in which some parents do value the coaching taking
Mhm.
place, but don't say it,
I
or
think you're just
they don't value it?
yeah, pulling back like the layers here on the dynamic of this relationship. If you're largely ignored and not supported, and the coach it has bias towards you and thinks that you're just an irrational parent or they don't want to spend time with you, feeling a sense of gratitude can be a challenge. Like what we're really talking about here is establishing trust. What we're really talking about here is establishing a sense of community and connection on the teams. This is not difficult. It is not rocket science. It's a matter of coaches rethinking the role of the parent within the ecosystem of their team specifically, or clubs within the club, and providing an environment in which there's a sense of collaboration. We believe that collaborative relationships with appropriate boundaries between coaches, clubs, and parents is in the best interest of player development. And so, what do those collaborative relationships look like? And there is issues with trust. There is issues with a confusion on the power imbalance. Some coaches, I talk to coaches and they feel like parents have all the power. I talk to parents and they feel like coaches have all the power. And why are we even talking about power? Why aren't we talking about the kids and their development and their sense of joy and inspiration around sport? We have a tendency to go to these levels. So, these are the conversations that we need to have so that coaches, club leaders, parents as well can pause for just a moment and think, well, how do I want this relationship to be? And what can I do to improve the coach-parent relationship? What's my role in it?
Hmm. What do you think parents really want from coaches? Like, and what are they afraid to tell a coach? Like, what's going unsaid?
We ask parents that question in our annual survey to sports parents. We ask a couple of questions. What do you need? What parents ultimately need, and I've been in this work for 15 years now. I've talked to hundreds of thousands of parents, and we narrow it down to what parents need and we distill it into a key message or messages. One of the key messages that comes forward is parents need to know that a coach cares about their child
Mm.
as a person more than an athlete. So that's what parents need. And a second kind of theme, if you will, to this work is in the survey, we also ask parents if your coach had one opportunity for coach education, do you want your child's coach to receive education around the game or to receive education around their interpersonal skills? And 64% of parents say that they would rather their coach receive education around interpersonal skills. And so I think that's what parents want. They want to trust. We want to trust the adults that are actively in our children's lives. And that's what we're talking about with parent engagement. Like I said, this doesn't have to be an email every week. It does not have to be a parent meeting 5 times a year. It does not have to be anything more than coaches, do you know the first names of all the parents that are on your team? Can you say, good morning, Simon. How's it going? How's your day been? Like just that interaction establishes a sense of trust and and creates a sense of belonging for the parent, which then facilitates, from the research is really clear, into better player development.
Mm. So the parent's job is to grow a person.
Mhm.
If the coach thinks their job is to grow an athlete, then we've got the basis for a misalignment there, haven't we? Uh, Now, an enlightened coach or a coach who's meeting the needs of their players can do both and actually can be led by the needs of the athlete and actually recognize that performance and development for an athlete comes from investing in them as people and caring for them. So that's one of the arguments we try to repeat again and
Sure.
again on this podcast, that caring and empathy from the coach you'll get better results if that's what you want. You can get it anyway. That's the
Mhm.
sort of irony there, isn't it? But if
Yeah.
there's a sense of misalignment, if the parents think the coach is just out to win and that's what they care about the most, then there's no amount of communication, no amount of knowing my first
Mhm.
name is going to get me to trust you.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe the question is where do misalignments come from? And what can we do as coaches to align the experience that we're having, that parents are having? And there's a lot of challenges to that. Don't get me wrong, like this isn't like, oh, just flip a switch and then everything's going to be easy. Because what largely needs to happen for this alignment to happen is one, coaches need to show up with empathy, work on their emotional intelligence skills, value meeting the needs holistically of the athletes in front of them. Like all of those things need to be in place on one side, which is a challenge into
Mm.
itself, to gain traction around that. And then at the same time, parents need to show up in a regulated state in a with perspective and understanding around the long-term athlete development, the nonlinear nature of development of a
Mm,
child, and
mm.
they need to trust that process, and they need to be given skills and affirmations and education. To be clear, I do not think that's the role of the coach. I think parents need to seek education and build that curiosity so they can support their athletes and so that this coach parent relationship will work. But we need to get coaches into a situation and into the mindset of being comfortable and confident in how they show up with parents within whatever their a coach's decision is on what that looks like for them personally, but to have clarity around it, to have some intentionality around it. And then at the same time, parents have work to do on their own. So the role of the coach is not to educate parents, is not to help parents regulate all of those things. Parents, need to seek that information on their own.
Yeah, yeah. It's you have to meet each
Would
other
be
in the middle.
overwhelming as a coach to
Oh,
think that you
imagine
had
that.
to manage that.
Yeah, yeah. I coach 15 kids and I coach, 15 sets of parents and guardians
Hmm.
as well. Like that, you're
Yeah.
right. That is too much. You can totally understand why some coaches just close off from it and just really want nothing to do with it because
I,
it's a tough place to go to, especially if
mhm.
you're a volunteer, you're time poor, or you're
Yeah.
lowly paid, and and now I got to spend 45 minutes on a phone to a parent who's got a problem. Like it's a tough situation.
Yeah, but at the same time, the benefits, what the research shows, the benefits of engagement, like there's a lot of good research around parent engagement in schools and what the benefits are for very simple parent engagement programs that have been implemented in schools. And schools that have effective implementation of parent engagement, students in those schools score higher in tests. They stick with school. They don't drop out. They complete their homework. Students in those schools have a higher sense of self-belief. Parents in those schools are empathetic, and the teachers are satisfied. So if we can take that research and parallel it, kind of lay it on top of a youth sports club and a youth sporting environment, the benefits of parent engagement far outweigh any of the stress that it might take. In fact, I think there's something to be said for coaches that are willing to, within their boundaries and what they're comfortable with, engage with parents in a simple way. That those coaches, again, will be more satisfied ultimately in the experience that they're having.
Mm,
It
mm.
might take stress away from parents. I mean, away from coaches. Like
Oh
this
yeah.
actually could be a solution to a lot of the issues that you have. This lack of trust, this pushing parents away is causing a lot of stress that is actually trickling down into a lot of different aspects. If you can start from a different place when it comes to the role of the parents. And this is changing. This is getting so much better. Like in the work that I'm doing 12 years ago, everyone thought I was crazy. I always got the joke, my favorite team is a team full of orphans. Like coaches would say that to me all the
Oh.
time. Like I don't hear that joke anymore. Like nobody
Mm,
thinks like people realize, wait, like this is not working what we're doing in youth sports and parents are a solution. So now the question is, how are they a solution? And that's what we're doing is that we're defining the role of the parent in sport, the role of the parent in a positive game day experience, and how we show up and creating shared standards for adult behavior in youth sport. And I think that's the next step of where we need to go. That's ultimately what we're talking about with parent engagement is just shared standards that we can align around.
mm. Just out of curiosity, what impact is NIL and the transfer portal having on parent relationships? Obviously, that's at the college level, and we're
College
talking a
level.
little bit more youth, but it's only a couple of years or just 1 year removed for for some
Mhm.
youth athletes. So a talented athlete coming through is seeing the power, the resources, and the
Mhm.
choice that they're going to have if they make it to that college level. Is
Mhm.
that filtering down into relationships at, say, junior and senior level at high schools?
I think in some situations it is. I wouldn't say it's necessarily filtering down into, I don't see a space where it filters down into the coach relationship in the youth environment. maybe in the college environment where
Yeah.
players are, being drawn to different schools with different
Mm.
NIL contracts and able to transfer. But within the youth environment, I think what happens and why we need even more parent education in this space is that parents have unrealistic expectations for the future of their child. And there's an unrealistic expectation or misalignment around how important this moment of their child's experience is. And when parents feel like there's a lot on the line, that's when their behavior starts to change. And that's when we see some misalignment. And so I definitely think that there's something to consider there. And I was talking to a league globally that is a league that filters into the professional league yesterday, and they were talking about this change that they've seen, this clear change that they've seen with parents in the last couple of years of the older high performance kids who really feel like there's a lot on the line because with NIL, quite frankly, there is. Now we're talking about, a lot of money for kids at a very young age.
And a lot of parents are investing serious money in their children, which just unnecessarily creates pressure on those young
Mhm.
people as well.
Yeah, these are
Even
structural issues that we're
oh
dealing
yeah,
with quite often.
oh
Marco
yeah,
Sullivan, my friend Marco Sullivan says that all the time, and I use that in my talks as well. A lot of what we're managing here are structural issues of sports, and education will get around that and support parents when there's a misalignment between the structures and the values, which there's definitely a misalignment right now.
Mm. Okay. So take me into some of the best practice that you see from coaches that are really engaging with parents and bringing them into the environment, making them partners. What are they doing specifically that other coaches aren't doing?
hmm So I will be really clear that, every coach has a different feeling on what effective parent engagement looks like. So
Yeah.
this does not necessarily mean bringing parents in some really clear, specific way that
Mm.
causes a lot of drain from you. This really can be as simple as just establishing trust in the coach parent relationship. So I would say, let's talk about trust when I answer that question. So we're going to establish trust in the coach parent relationship when as coaches we talk straight to parents, when we give real opinions, when we give real thoughts, when we don't try to sugarcoat something, when we talk straight and honestly to parents, whether that be about a child's future potential, whether that be about what is happening at training, whether that be about a parent. And wow, you seem to feel a lot of emotion right now. Have you considered getting some support as a parent? Because I think this is impacting and potentially impacting your child. Like talking like that to parents when we hear a lot of emotion, we need to demonstrate respect in order to establish trust. That means learning their name, not having biases or reflecting on the bias that we do have as coaches, and demonstrating respect, creating transparency with parents will establish trust. If we make a mistake, righting our wrongs. I
Yeah.
tell a
Okay.
story about forgetting to sub a kid in the whole second half or the whole first half of a
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
because she arrived late. She was on my starting lineup originally. She arrived late and I forgot to like weave her in, and she sat the whole first half. These are U10 kids. Like
Yeah.
by no means am I going to like not let her play because her parents were late to getting her
Yeah.
to a game. And so I went, oh my gosh, at halftime, and I walked right over to the parents and I righted my wrong. I just apologized. I said, just made a total mistake, forgot that she was here. There was no punishment intended, and got right back into it. So as coaches, we need to right our wrongs. We get yellow carded, we get referee reported for some behavior that we have that we reflect on and we're like, gosh, that was really unnecessary. Right or wrongs. Show loyalty. This is a real problem structurally in sports right now with all these tryouts and club hopping, and the flip of that, because we hear coaches complain about parents aren't loyal. They go from this club to that club. They're just looking for the best environment. But we kind of do the same thing as coaches sometimes in that we let kids go to get what feels like a better kid on the team, even though they can only come to half the practices, or we get guest players for a tournament and like neglect the kids that have been a part of the team. So, we need to show loyalty to one another. And then I think the next three things that come to mind when it comes to trust is that we need to keep our commitments, whether that's playing time commitments, whether that's commitments on how we're showing up, feedback that we're going to be giving, communication that we are committed to with the parents. Like we need to keep those commitments. Um, we need to listen first. It's so easy to make those assumptions that parents walking across the field or the court or the pitch after, and they're walking towards you, you just lost, and you have all of these assumptions. Like just listen first. Maybe there's something else going on.
Yeah.
And as coaches, we need to get better. This is this sense of continual improvement
Mm.
when it comes to the way we show up and meet the needs of kids and the environment.
Mm. Talk me through then a particular dynamic. Female youth players, male kid coach. I've been in that situation myself as a coach and as a parent, and particularly a reluctance around sharing information about being on your period, and like, which just for me highlights just the broader structural and societal challenges that we have about talking about a topic like that.
Yeah.
Um, but also, so much information is not shared. I've seen young players get injured when they're on their period, and the lack of research in that space is really,
Yeah.
really confronting. Like it's something's gone significantly wrong there. Just societal issues
Well,
that
something
are
hasn't gone
beyond
wrong. It's
sport.
just continued the way it's always been.
Well,
Like it's
yes,
not like
yeah,
something went wrong.
yeah,
It's been
yeah,
wrong forever when it
yeah,
comes to the lack of research in women,
yeah.
just in general in medicine.
Uh-huh. Yes, absolutely. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Uh, so, talk me through that. Talk me through
Mhm.
like what can we do in that space? What can male coaches of female teams do in that space? Do they start talking about it to the players and then just risk blanket embarrassment and never being able to go there? How do you start a conversation? Is that something you could speak to a parent about? But I know parents don't want to expose that information as well
Mhm.
sometimes. Yeah, take me into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think normalizing female health from a
Mm,
male coach into a girl's environment is really powerful. And I think that male coaches, if they're comfortable and confident, have a really unique opportunity to really change the narrative of how girls feel about themselves. Because hearing these messages from a man and normalizing their menstrual health, their female health, can be game changing.
yeah.
That being said, I think this is a great like tipping off point for just having awkward and difficult conversations. And I know there's a lot of coaches listening that were just like, when you brought up this topic, right? Like
Yeah.
their heartbeat is maybe going a little bit more, and they're like, they're maybe sweating just a little bit, like imagining like what the hell am I going to do with this? Sorry, with this type of
Well,
conversation.
you could tell I'm the father of two teenage boys, girls,
To
not even
teenage
girls,
girls. Yeah,
two teenage
exactly.
girls, because
And
you need to embrace it. And if you, as you say, if you normalize it, it can become a way of connecting.
yeah, and I will say that my experiences in working with clubs and organizations in Europe and the UK specifically, you all have done an excellent job of promoting these conversations and normalizing them with different media campaigns, much more than we've done in the United States.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it is interesting, but in terms of like the advocacy for girls that they've heard on social media is definitely more than what has happened here in the United States. We're making progress for sure. What I would say to coaches who are coaching girls, I would say to educate yourself, to be really clear on what you're talking about and get all of your questions answered. There's some great organizations that are leading when it comes to support for women. Orico and their Fitter Woman, I think is the name of the app. You can link into
Mm,
that.
mm,
I've had them on my platform a number of times discussing female health and menstrual cycles and the impact of menstruation on athlete performance. So educate yourself. And I would just say the quick soundbite for coaches is that we do not want to alter an athlete's experience in sport because they have their period. It should not be like a
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
You mentioned, oh, this athlete got hurt when she was on her period. Yes, we're seeing some science around that, but that doesn't mean you don't play them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean like you hold them back, but maybe they need to be, as an athlete, more considerate on the sleep they're getting, on their hydration, and on their nutrition during different cycles, parts of their cycle. And that's what, as coaches, we need to understand. I would say the best conversation, I think I would approach it to just having a parent meeting, or in a parent meeting talking about it, getting a third person involved in terms of
Yeah.
getting the parents onto education platform where they can get more information. And probably for the younger ages kids, I would have that conversation be between the parents and letting the parents advocate for the kids and educate them around this. And then, as we get into more high performance environments, absolutely, girls are reporting, where they are in their menstrual cycle, so that from an athlete performance standpoint, we can support them and make sure that they're, adequately prepared for competition and for training.
Hmm. Seems like the issue is well discussed in performance spaces, mainly because but it's medicalized in a way. So it's through the sports science staff,
Mhm.
through the team doctor or the club doctor or something like that, and then filtered to the coaches. So my perception
Mhm.
is that things are changing and have changed in that space. But filtering that down into the amateur or grassroots space is much more challenging, because you can open a can of worms there, quite easily. A coach can
Yeah,
go in with the best of, and a male coach can go in with the best of intentions, but get it wrong, and
absolutely. And that's something you
embarrass
don't
people.
want to get wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying seek education. I don't know,
Mm,
maybe
mm,
have a female like person that is like an
mm,
advocate for you, that has like a team kit, so you have period supplies for girls
yeah.
during games, and the girls don't have to come to you to ask for them, but if they do, practice how you're going to respond and have it
Mm,
be like totally nonchalant. But there
mhm,
is like a team mom that they can go to for help, especially in those ages where it's
mm,
still a new thing for girls and they're feeling awkward about it.
yeah. No, thanks for
But
your.
I think coaches, to go back to parent engagement, I think coaches talking to parents about like this topic specifically in a very like simple way, like this is our plan around this. This is what your girls have access to. This is where I encourage you to go seek more information. That's the role, what I believe is the real role of the coach when it comes to parent engagement, or one of the key roles of the coach. And what I say to coaches all the time is, if you can encourage your parents to be curious, then
Mm,
mission accomplished.
mm,
Like the coaches, to answer your question before, like what the coaches that are getting it right, what are they doing? They're establishing trust, and they're encouraging parents to be curious about their child's sporting experience and the way they're experiencing it. And so then the parent can get better, the parent can get educated, because that education mitigates stress and it ultimately
mm.
supports players with their development.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's a really important insight. Can we broaden the conversation now? Because what we're talking about is helping parents to feel a part of what we're doing,
Mhm.
which by extension means families feel a part of it. So the child or the young person can feel more involved, and it can have a greater sense of belonging to that club environment
Absolutely.
if the parent also feels they belong, because now you've got this kind of mutually reinforcing loop here where everybody's involved. So I always think a really healthy sign of a club environment is when you hear about, dinner table conversations. Oh,
Mhm.
I was talking to my daughter yesterday at over dinner, and she said something this, something that about the club. Like that's generally quite a healthy sign. That means that there's a broad range of people feel like they belong. But what does
Mhm.
belonging mean? Like, how would I know that people have a sense of belonging to our club environment?
I really like the research of the McMillan and Chavez here around sense of community theory and the four components of community. I do a lot of education with coaches and club leaders globally on this. And I think we're really clear and actually been given a lot of great research. In fact, Dr. Eric Legg has done follow-up studies on sense of community, specifically with parents in sport. And so we know what what we need within the environments. We know that parents need to feel a sense of group membership. So, group membership in the research has four different components. They need to feel like there's some personal investment, which in sports, parents got that one down pat between
Mhm.
time and financing. We have the sense of personal investment. This is where boundaries comes up. Parents, from a group membership standpoint, we need to instill a sense of boundaries as coaches in order for parents to feel a sense of community. So when the door is open, when the door is closed, when it's okay to talk to me, when it's not, like we need to be that clear as coaches in establishing boundaries in order to create a sense of community. Parents need emotional safety. They need to feel like they can come to you and talk to you about their child's period, to use that as an example. If there's a
Mhm.
concern around nutrition or she really hasn't slept well the last 2 nights, and,
Yep.
just giving you a heads up, and, that sense of emotional safety parents need to feel. And they need to feel, you mentioned belonging as connected to a sense of community, but they need to feel a sense of belonging. Whether that's they have a volunteer opportunity, their name, they feel connected to this group membership. So, group membership is one key thing that as coaches we can look at and just sort of do little check marks or create intentionality around how we're going to establish a sense of group membership. And the other three things that are part of this research from McMillan and Chavez, the first is needs fulfillment. And we talked about that. Parents need to know you care about their child as a human being before you care about them as an athlete. And then parents need to have a sense of influence and feel like they have influence. And this, to me, is where education comes in. When we encourage parents to feel a sense of curiosity and parents seek information about how to support their child, that's when these great things will happen. And parents will feel like they have a sense of influence within the environment, like they're important. The way they interact with their child, those dinner table conversations, they actually really matter when it comes to a child's long-term sense of connection and fulfillment to sport. And then the final thing they need is a shared emotional connection. And sport uniquely does this too. We're on the sidelines. We're wearing the same colors as the team. So repping the team kit, all of those things helps develop the sort of shared emotional connection. The coach bringing the parents in after a big game and doing a little cheer with the parents and the kids maybe once. Like just
Yeah.
those little things really go a long way in feeling a sense of group membership. I mean, a sense of community.
That's really interesting. In our basketball club here in Edinburgh, we've got about 460, 480 members now. And so we've got a reasonable sample size when we do our annual survey, and belonging is something that we really dig into, right? So we've done some of our own research in that space and pulled out some of the factors that you've described here. And what we find really interesting is we've done it 3 years in a row. We get consistently high scores on questions like, my coaches treat me as a person before a player. I'm
Mm-hmm.
accepted in this environment. I feel I belong. I feel safe. So quite high scores there.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly lower scores in I feel involved in decision making. And that's
This
the
is for players or
This is
parents?
yeah, this is for players. We
Players.
also we
Yeah.
yes, but we survey parents in a parallel survey
Yeah.
as well. So we're trying to create this sense of belonging, and we're doing well in a lot of spaces, particularly I
Mm-hmm.
guess you could say the personal, psychological, or individual psychological considerations. But when
Yeah.
it comes to sharing power and sharing decision making,
Mm-hmm.
our parents and our athletes are telling us that they feel less involved in that space. And that's been the hardest thing for us to actually change in our culture.
Yeah. What have your strategies been to try to address that?
We've gone down the route of kind of player representation and decision
That's
making.
cool.
So we've had some
Love it.
club captains and that sort of thing. However, that runs the risk of being consultation, which is different from engagement. Consultation is often, hey, we're thinking of doing this thing. What do you think? Instead of engagement being, what do you
Mhm.
need? So it tends to be consultation turns into just informing people quite easily. See, in our experience, we've got that wrong. So just say, hey, we're going to do this, and communicating early. That might be consultation, but it's not in engagement. But
Yeah.
we're struggling in that
Mm.
space because particularly coaches want a sense of autonomy. Our environment is hopefully needs based, but it's also coach led.
Yep.
Uh, People don't want
Have
to
you
give up.
explored any like player-led practices twice a season or something like that? I'm sure you have. I mean, this is your work.
Yes, yes. I would hope we wouldn't need to do that twice a season because I would hope that is kind of embedded. So player
Good.
timeouts, for example, in the middle of scrimmages,
Mm.
breaking teams, breaking into two teams and then scouting each other and then playing each other,
Mhm.
debriefs that are player led. So we should see that weaving all the way through. But
Yeah.
still, our parents sense that they don't have as big a say as they want to in our club decision making, and the athletes don't have as big a say as they want to in the team decision making. Things like
Mm.
styles of play, team tactics and that kind of thing. And we get the
Yeah.
sense for our young people they want to be more involved in that, but the coaches are perhaps a little bit resistant, and I can
Mm.
understand why because their young athletes or young people in general tend to vastly overestimate their knowledge and their domain knowledge in a certain space, as we all did at that
Yeah.
age. I just want to share that because
Yeah.
this idea of belonging and being in it together, it's much easier said than done.
Yeah. Things that come to mind for me with this conversation is our one is like when you ask a 14-year-old boy, do you feel a
Mhm.
sense of influence? Like how they perceive that question and are answering it might be different than how you perceive that question
Yeah.
as a club leader or as an adult. So quite possibly the boys are thinking like influence within the team and oh yeah, there's this boy in the team that doesn't like me and so I feel like I don't belong. Like it could even be as simple as that. So that's a big question to ask a child, influence, or however you're framing that question, just to maybe get a little bit more information. Would be curious, or I'd be curious. The other thing that we're seeing is when we're talking about a misalignment, is we're seeing some data that insinuates this idea that kids are dropping out of sport because they don't want to travel so much. They don't want to have such a big commitment. They don't
Mhm.
want to, and they don't feel like there's a place for them to have good quality coaching on a regular basis where they feel challenged and also don't have to like commit a third of their life to the sports experience, but they still want it to be really important to them. So that I think is something as club leaders globally, we need to start considering more. And I love the fact that you're inquiring to players and parents and asking them about that. There was a recent study in the German Bundesliga by Travis Dorsch and Valeria Eckart that looked at a German Bundesliga academies. And what they found was that there was a genuine misalignment between coaches and parents about what people wanted. And what I found really curious about the study is that the misalignment was actually that the club leaders thought parents wanted more and the parents
Mhm.
actually wanted less. And that's where the misalignment was. And for most people, you would never think that that's where the misalignment was. But I do think I love the fact that you're surveying here. Really, really important that you're doing that and leading like that because there's a lot to be said for getting accurate feedback and taking action on it in order to provide environments that kids want so that they stay healthy and engaged with sport.
Mm. Yeah, having a environment that's needs based and person centered is very easy to talk about on a podcast.
Yeah.
Much, 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 much harder to do when you're in a grassroots setting with
I
resource constraints
Yeah.
and volunteers and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I applaud you for trying to position it that way. And this is where parent education comes in too, is what does that type of environment look like? It looks a lot more chaotic than parents may be used to. That environment looks maybe parents are used to sport. I'm doing a project right now with a Northern Ireland Federation for soccer. And what we've seen is that what a lot of our messaging has been football is different now to
Mm.
parents. Like how you grew up, experience football is not how football looks now with small-sided, with
Yeah.
different coaching best practices. Coaches should not be interacting with kids largely, probably like the coaches the way they were so
Yeah.
hard and harsh on you before. And so, there's a lot to kind of unpack when it comes to in a grassroots environment, how we can provide kids. But a big part of that is important is parent education so that parents don't push back. Because I hear a lot from coaches is, oh, I can't do that because parents would say that practice isn't good enough. Or, I'd
Mhm.
get a lot of negative feedback from parents, whether they would or not remains to be seen. But coaches certainly feel that way. Parent education is key here.
Yeah, and it's changing all the time for these young athletes. Like as parents, we're having to adjust on the fly because there's some of the social, cultural, structural, geopolitical factors and environments that affect young people in particular. In my experience, particularly mid, late teenagers who are thinking about their future. These are really relevant issues. These things that they're seeing on their social media feed are affecting them. Like I have a sense that young people now are much more serious than I was. I essentially grew up at a time of relative prosperity and certainly peace. So there
Mm.
wasn't big stress on me.
Serious about what?
I think they're really serious about their futures,
Mm.
more serious than I think my generation was. That's my perception. But I see a lot of young people now really thinking hard about their futures, a lot of pressure on them to do well. Like in times of uncertainty, there's just some really interesting responses to that. This is a generation that's been through COVID.
Mhm.
So obviously, depending on what country you're in, that affected you in different ways. But COVID lockdowns, for example, had a big impact on our current teenagers. Here in Europe, you've got broader issues going on. You've got climate change affecting some young people. I didn't think about climate change
Mhm.
when I was a teenager, and some of the stress that comes with that. And everything's changing. It feels like society is changing so fast now. It's as a
Yeah.
parent, it's really hard to keep up. And then as a
How,
coach, it's impossible. It feels
as
sometimes.
I hear you go through that list, I'm like, my go-to thought is how important our role is as
Yeah,
coaches in these
yeah,
kids' lives. How important having a thoughtful, empowering, inspiring, joy-filled, fun sporting experience that is such an essential step of a child's experience in life and growing up. And the work we're doing as coaches, as leaders, is just so important when it comes to the larger societal issues that children are facing today. So, that to me is what I'm going to as I'm hearing you say this, and how can we create environments where the children, do feel a sense of belonging, influence, fun, inspiration. That's our role, and we're not going to do that as effectively as we can as coaches unless we choose to involve parents in some way.
mm,
Because what has become so clear to me in the last 15 years of this work is that small changes in adult behavior can dramatically change a child's experience in sport. And this is where we need to just start taking a little step for coaches that don't engage parents and push them away and think I'm crazy, then try one little thing. For coaches that are curious and actually think there's something here for them and maybe this will support kids better, then dive in and educate yourself. Take our parent engagement for coaches course that I have. Support yourself in gaining a deeper understanding of ways that you can show up, so that kids can be supported. Because ultimately, we need to create a sense of community and belonging, and for our children, and that is a real missing gap and an opportunity that we have, and a responsibility that we have as coaches in this world.
Skye, I think that's a beautiful way to finish. So
Yeah.
thank you for that insight. You've reinforced to me the role of coaches as a trusted adult. That
Mm.
has never changed, but has become even more important and more powerful in today's chaotic world. Thank you for your insights. I hope the coaches listening really gain from this, and particularly, I hope we've helped to reframe parents as assets and as partners and as members and who belong to our team, community, and our club environments. So thank you very much. We shall tag
Absolutely.
you and your work
Mhm.
in all of our posts. So for the coaches listening, if you want to connect with Skye, please feel free to get in touch via her website, etc. Connect on social media, LinkedIn, whatever's good for you. And all that's left to say is thanks again, Skye.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate it.